I think one of the first times I ever did reading in public, I was like manager of some speed dating event with a friend of mine.
Okay.
It was at this nightclub in a casino. And she said in the middle of like in the break, she said, okay, Kathy's going to do free readings for everyone. And so it's like White Snakes blasting on the stereo. I've got like a massive lineup of people. That was my introduction. So it's
Wow.
kind of like, okay, if I can do that, then I can pretty much do anything.
Maybe if you don't want to talk, you could just listen.
Gang, what is happening? I am Mal Foster, and you are listening to, or perhaps once again, even watching the latest episode of your third favorite, above average, but infinitely curious podcast, Dimed Out, a show dedicated to exploring the mysteries and the meaning of life, an audio/video kaleidoscope exploring what it is to live, to laugh, and indeed, love. Not necessarily in that order. So yeah, you can check this out as a video episode. We did one last week for the 2 weeks with Karen episode, which I think was a perfect fit for the content in that last episode, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out, you really should. Some really interesting stuff in there, to say the least. But I also feel that it benefits what we're doing here this week and next week, and the guest that we're talking to. We're not going to be making a permanent switch to video. It's just an occasional treat, I guess. I mean, I don't know who it's a treat for. Certainly not me. And, you know, I'm not going to be bold enough to presume it's a treat for you, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit of a variation. This week, we're going to be taking a walk on the mystical side as we dive into all things metaphysical. My guest for this week and next is the wonderful Kathy Crabbe. Kathy is an artist, a psychic, a soul reader, a very talented woman in many regards, and on top of that, just a generally lovely conversation. I first came into contact with Kathy while searching into the world of soul reading, doing a little bit of basic research. Now, soul reading is something I had never heard of until Dimed Out's resident Fippy, Rachel Shaw, floated it my way. She said, this is something you may be interested in and could possibly make for a good episode. So taking her advice and trusting her judgment, as always, I did a little bit of a look into it. And in my basic initial research, I came across Kathy, and in particular, her YouTube channel, which, by the way, is going to be linked down in the show notes below. Presumably, that's for the people on YouTube. Also, if you're listening to this on like a device like your phone, it'll be in the show notes there as well. Or you can go over to the website, dimed-out.com, and find everything related to Kathy too. But yeah, I came across Kathy, her YouTube channel. I thought, this is somebody that I think I could have a really good conversation with regarding soul reading and other related metaphysical topics. And that's exactly what you're about to hear. So in this episode, this half of the conversation, we're going to be getting into what exactly is soul reading. We're going to be getting into Kathy's background, how she actually got into the world of metaphysics and into psychic training, going through a psychic boot camp, which is an interesting story. We're going to be getting into the idea of skeptics and non-traditional readings, how she actually goes about doing her soul reading, and into different ideas of belief structures and the idea of intuition versus interpretation as well. And I'm going to stop talking about it. Let's get into it. Just a quick heads up as well before we start, Kathy. My cat is in here. She's been perfectly fine at the minute, but we have got a new rug in the office, and she, for the most part, is very placid and will just lounge on it and sleep. But sometimes she will also just scratch about it a little bit. So if you hear any sudden sort of noises, it's probably that. But she looks quite pleasantly sleepy at the minute, so. Fingers crossed she stays that way. What we could do, if you want to kind of give us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are, Kathy, what it is that you do, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a soul reader and an artist and the creator of 4 oracle decks. So yeah, and so I've been doing this kind of work since about 1992.
Okay.
So after I graduated college and moved to California from Kingston, Ontario, or actually Montreal. I was living in Montreal, Canada, and moved down here, which it seems like sort of a cliche, like move to California, become a psychic, but it actually happened.
So you say to become a psychic, so you could consider yourself to be a psychic.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're kind of going to get into this because I'm curious. I have questions. So I guess we'll start with the main reason that I got you on the show in the first place is because of the soul reading. I have been introduced to this very briefly by a close friend of mine who said this might be something you would be interested in. And I've looked a little bit into it, a little bit being the key phrase. And I come across your channel, and you come across as a very sort of just very magnetic personality. You obviously know what you're talking about, and I thought this seems to be the person to go to for this. I feel so. I asked you on, but what I want to know straight out the gate, in a very basic fashion, what actually is soul reading for those that don't know, including myself, to a vast degree.
Yeah, it's probably just another word for psychic reading.
Okay.
But I didn't want to call myself a psychic reader. It
Right.
has that sort of stigma attached to it a little bit. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm trying to think back how I even came up with that term. And I may have had some help from mentors and whatnot. And I think when I coined that term, I think it was fairly new back in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
So those kind of things weren't really as popular as they are now.
Right.
It sort of flooded the internet, all this sort of new age spiritual, metaphysical is really intense now on the internet. So back then, that term was a newer term. But soul, reading the soul, just intuitive reading, I look at past, present, future, and I normally don't have the person in front of me either. Yes, I started out in person with my training, and I was actually trained by a English person.
Oh, okay.
An English traditional healing circle is what he called it, because he had come from sort of a dodgy part of London. I can't remember.
There's a few of them, Kathy. Take your pick.
Yeah, I studied intensely with a group at his house for maybe 6 months, where we'd meet every week, and a small group of 5 to 7 people, and we'd sit in a circle and we would do readings for each other, so one-on-one. We'd also do mediumship, which is, in the way we were taught, one person would stand up in the middle of the circle and they would try to connect with someone who had passed over in reference to someone in the circle, related to someone in the circle. And then we were trained. He was this person who I was trained by, Adam Higgs. He's like a huge bodybuilder. So he started a gym actually in Ojai after moving from this area. So it's like, like shaved head, like massive bodybuilder. So he considered this kind of like a boot camp. A psychic boot camp.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's how he trained us. It's like, no bullshit. When you do the mediumship, you give 3 pieces of specific, without a doubt, information that this is the person that has passed over. They have to identify that with a yes or a no. They can't give you any other information. And then
no vagueness. There was very sort of adamant on specificity. Yes. Just like no dancing around. Maybe if, like, very generic things that most people could relate to. It was like,
specific things like I kind of like tuning into how they died. So
Uh-huh.
I would often get a sense of if they were short of breath and then they choked or not choked, but their lungs gave out. Then I would actually start to feel that.
Hmm.
I would be like, like I'd find myself actually feeling that. And so I would really go with that. And I kind of train yourself to, whatever you get, you have to trust it, and
Right.
you have to, you share that. And I've found over the years that is the way I work. So that was just part of my training, is you have to be very specific, no leading, no being led on. And
Mhm.
then at the end of that, once they've been identified and you share all this information, then you pass on a message. And the message also couldn't be vague. It had to
Right.
be very specific, or else Adam, our teacher, would just say, no.
I imagine that's one of the major criticisms that you get from people that are skeptical, is that they will immediately lean to, oh, but it is all very vague. So I suppose kind of being very mindful about being specific and sort of direct is
Yeah.
an approach to counteract that, I guess.
And I don't have any skeptics that I talk to.
No.
If I don't even talk to people about this
Hmm.
unless it's something they are sincerely interested in, because I can't, why waste my time?
Well,
So
yeah, exactly. Unless someone is like coming to you with a sort of open mind towards it, yeah, it's not really going to benefit anybody, I guess.
yeah, I did work in, somehow I found myself in LA County. Like I didn't even know I was there. I was just driving around I drove to this store called Gypsy Love in, where is that? Somewhere in LA County. And so I interviewed, and it was a very, very sketchy part of town. And so that was where you get drop-ins.
Mhm.
When you work at a store, anyone can come in. So that was really difficult, because I think the people that came in, they really just wanted the owner of the store, but she was so booked that
Right.
she required other people to work for her. But people who came in there, they wanted her, and her approach was as a, like, really, really hardcore, kind of like my teacher. Like basically, yell, like kind of like telling people what to do she used to be a mediator, a professional mediator. So
Okay.
she was used to really telling people what to do. It felt like much more forceful than my technique. I did my interview, which is you give the owner a reading, and she said, "Oh, this feels like I'm at a women's circle." It's very, like, kind of a different feeling. And so that was my approach. And then I did have people coming in there that would be, one woman came in, and she was just like, "I'm not going to believe anything you say." And so she basically said nothing. And she just said, and just gave like nothing. Like there was no like interaction. I felt like it was more like a test of some kind. And
Huh.
it was very awkward and
Yeah.
not pleasant at all.
Was that difficult for you to get any sort of read from that person? So if someone comes in with that very sort of staunch, stoic, I'm not going to believe anything you say, like I've already made my mind up, do you actually get anything from that person, or is it just like a dead signal?
I mean, I got lots. I mean, I still get lots. It made me a bit nervous, because
Well, yeah.
yeah, I mean, most of my, like, 100% of my readings are done not in person. This was just me kind of, working
Uh-huh.
outside my comfort zone. So that alone was challenging, just to be out of my comfort zone. Two,
Right.
to have someone so adamant that they weren't going to participate in the reading in any way. So to
It's
be
almost like a hostile denial.
very hostile. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like, I don't really see the point of, I think what happens is, when you come off the street and get a reading, you get a certain kind of reading. Like most readers will do a way of reading. They have their deck, they lay out their cards, and they will just flip over the cards and then read the card kind of thing. I've never done anything like that. I read in a way that my teacher taught us, but he said this is actually the hardest way to read,
Okay.
which is in person. I would hold their hand and I would just, read them. And then I would work with cards as well. So it's like, I'm not like using the cards as props in any way. It's like I'm just purely psychically connecting with them. So I think if you have not looked at my website and you don't even know anything about what I do, and you come in to get a reading, you expect something
Right.
specific,
Yeah.
and then you get something, you're like, what is this? Like, for people that are not like, they're closed, they just want something very traditional.
Right.
I'm not a traditional. I don't do that.
I want to dial it back a little bit, Kathy, and go back to your training and how you even kind of got into this in the first place. Is this kind of thing, has this always been something that you've been drawn to? Is this something that you've always kind of felt a connection to? Like, when do you have like an earliest memory or recollection of like when you first found yourself sort of connected to this?
To this
I don't.
metaphysical.
Yeah, I don't know what to describe it as, because I don't particularly know. But yeah.
Yeah, I maybe say maybe metaphysical
Sure.
realm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think dreams, working with dreams,
Hmm.
always been, and I find that with most people, that's how they start in getting into this
Hmm.
kind of world. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that because it opens itself to a lot of interesting avenues. I've done a couple of episodes based on a dream interpretation where I kind of went through a dream journal that I was having, but I was looking at it more from a psychological standpoint rather than a sort of spiritual standpoint. But I think that there is definitely a crossover, and I can see where people can kind of get a foot in the door into the metaphysical realm, as you put it, through dreams, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this work is metaphysical work is just to help us expand our boundaries,
Hmm.
and help us expand our minds, and most importantly, help us trust our intuition,
Right.
because it can be such a lifesaver to have that.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like, I mean, just even from a standard point of view, metaphysical side, just kind of being more in tune with yourself is definitely the goal. I think that we're all kind of striving for, consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah, yeah.
But how? So I want to kind of go back to your training a second. How did you end up finding this this bodybuilding English person? Which, I mean, it's a strange sort of pairing. You wouldn't really expect both of these sort of worlds or lifestyles to kind of connect on the surface, I guess. A lot of people would think, oh, okay, bodybuilder. Not exactly the first person I would peg for somebody that is going to be into soul reading and what have you. But how did you end up kind of finding your way into training?
I think it was just timing. Like, that's a lot of what I talk about in readings,
Mm-hmm.
and especially with astrology. So I was around 40, and that's something in astrology called Uranus opposition, when Uranus is in the sky, where it's in the opposite place from where you were born.
Mm-hmm.
And Uranus rules Aquarius, electricity, unexplained happenings like the internet, really reaching out into the far realms of life itself. So when you got at 40, we all get this sort of awakening into sort of electric Kundalini rising, or just you're just sort of shaken up. And if, say, for example, if you're really stuck, Uranus, being ruler of electricity, is going to sort of shock you awake in a way. So get you out of your old patterns
Okay.
and shake you up. So I knew that was coming because I'd been studying astrology forever, and one of probably my first passion when it comes to the metaphysical.
Okay.
So I had readings and I was trying to get prepared for the unexpected, which is actually impossible to do. But if you know there's going to be a lot of, sort of roller coaster coming, then at least you know that. And also 40 is like a midlife
Right.
transition as well. So you've got the two going hand in hand. So that it was around that time, I just felt really drawn to, forced almost into, I have to share everything that I've been doing just for myself, which was working with, oracle cards and tarot decks and astrology and dreaming and spirit guides and herbs and crystals and everything I'd been studying. I felt like I have to share this right now. And I have to give back and start giving back all that I've learned. And so I think just when you're ready, it's like they say, just kind of a cliche again, but when you're ready, the teacher appears or the opportunity appears, and you just have to be ready to jump on that. So that is kind of what happened. I had a teacher appear very hardcore teacher, which is really good for me personally, probably not for most people and not for everyone in my group. Someone had kind of almost a breakdown or something because it was too hardcore for her.
Wow, why? What was happening?
Breakdown, but it was just, it's like there's a lot of pressure to, with the mediumship, for example, if you're up there standing up in the middle of a group and you don't get something or you're wrong or you're off and you keep doing that, that can be hard on people because our teacher wasn't someone who said, oh, that's okay, it's going to be all right. It'd be like, go sit down, like, no.
Right.
So I personally like that. It's very good. That worked very well for me. It really pushed me, and he really pushed me to develop. And it really felt like a duck to water. That's how I put doing this kind of work. It felt like I was kind of at home in a way.
Right. So it just felt very natural for you to be within that environment and sort of tapping into that.
Yeah.
Is it something that you've always kind of felt? Like you said, you were doing it for yourself before you kind of reached this point that you wanted to share. Is this something that you've kind of felt from an early age? This sort of, I guess, connection to metaphysical aspects?
Yeah, it was always there, sort of in the background as something that was really kind of calling to me, and it felt very comfortable and at home working with, all those things I described in all those ways, and studies of paganism and goddess religion and her story and, hidden, anything that's been hidden by the dominant culture, any information that has been, buried and kept, like almost kept from us or denigrated because it's, like astrology or, intuitive psychic stuff as you're crazy or.
Right. Do you feel like that's definitely something that's happened? It's kind of been put to the side and sort of almost, I want to say shunned. That maybe feels perhaps a bit too drastic, but kind of pushed away as sort of contemporary culture has grown.
I mean, it does seem like it's very popular now as compared.
There's definitely been a resurgence.
It's definitely shunned. Like my best friend here is an astrologer, Chad Woodward, and he's back at school studying anthropology, and he's a brilliant person. And so he's really struggling with, academia in regards to their opinions and their dealings with anything that's sort of counterculture, even, like ayahuasca or studies, medical studies of hallucinogenics, anything that's in this realm that we're talking about.
So he's found kind of a bit of static, a bit of friction with those that are more of an academic mindset to kind of be more open to.
Huge, yeah. There's a big scientific. I mean, it'd be really fun for you to interview him because he could give you his take on.
Yeah.
feel like he wants to write a paper, maybe a thesis, a book for sure, about the whole issue, all these issues, the rift between science and intuition.
That would be interesting to talk to him about that, because that's on its own subject a very interesting area about how there is so much friction and resistance and the sort of grey area in which the two kind of overlap, and how a lot of what was considered scientific principles by modern standards were considered more, I guess, magic at a previous point.
Right. And he is studying that in school. I mean, that was one of his courses, was magic and witchcraft, I think. So they do, I mean, because his emphasis is anthropology. So he says you'd think they'd be more open in anthropology, but still there's a huge chasm between, you know, studying it and actually being or doing that kind of work, you know.
It is interesting considering how much at the forefront of culture it would have been at a certain point in humans' history. So yeah, as you say, with them actually being students of anthropology, you'd think they'd kind of be like a little bit more accepting and open-minded that, okay, this was, for lack of a better term, the norm once at a time.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are teachers, specific teachers at certain universities that are open, because I encounter them and I always share them.
Oh, sure. So. Well, absolutely. That's what I'm finding. Whatever area that you kind of find yourself exploring, what have you, whether that be for academic purposes or just for just sheer intrigue of your own individual merit, you're going to find it's a diverse and mixed bunch. You're going to find.
Yeah. But I still think when you're involved in it in a more personal way, that you're going to be extreme misfit, oddball, even anyone else in academia, you know, you're going to be kind of blacklisted possibly.
Do you feel like there is still quite a bit of stigma, despite there has obviously been quite an insurgence of it recently? It's been gaining popularity in the last number of years for sure, but do you feel like there's still very much stigmas attached to it?
Oh yeah, no, there's huge, especially here in the States, with all the, you know, extremism going on, and the religious right and the fundamentalists. And if you're in a part of town that is like that, then yeah, you're going to probably encounter a ton of prejudice, hate crime, all kinds of things.
It's a sad state of affairs when people can't actually kind of just look at something with an open mind, and they're just very closed off. Yeah, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir though here, Kathy. I feel like we're covering ground you're very familiar with, so I'm going to move on.
Sure.
I want to get into the idea of intuition, because that was one of my big key questions here. In terms of soul reading specifically, is it primarily intuition, or is there a sense of interpretation in there as well? Like you've mentioned intuition. Is this something that just comes to you, like you are receiving, you are kind of like a conduit for something?
Yeah, definitely a conduit. When I do a reading, I just have to be completely a conduit. That's it. Of course, I interpret. I mean, I'll get images. Like when I read, like I'll just show you my my first deck was the Lefty Oracle deck, and this is what got me going. I spent about 5 years like drawing with my non-dominant left hand.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, tons of studies about how that helps connect the two sides of the brain, the corpus callosum between the two sides. It helps, you know, maybe enlarge, or it helps you with the intuitive and logical. Okay. So I feel like by doing that, and I did thousands of drawings, and then I became a soul reader, and then I turned those drawings into my first deck. So to me, that all connects. And yeah. So, you know, like these are very odd cards. Crazy Janice dancing as fast as she can.
And these are all from the drawings that you did for 5 years, you said, with your non-dominant hand.
Yeah, I just did these characters.
Was that like an act of discipline as well for you, just to see, like, I'm going to stick with this? This is not what I'm used to, but I'm going to kind of learn myself to do it. And as you say, kind of create a correlation between left and right brain, but also just for you personally, is that like a sort of a feat of discipline almost?
I mean, everything I do is a feat of discipline, so I don't even know how to
Right.
distinguish.
That's a commitment, because that's impressive, Kathy. To stick with anything for 5 years is impressive,
Yeah,
but to stick with
but
something that is,
I'm an artist. That's what we do, right?
yeah, but that's, yeah, absolutely. And also challenging yourself, kind of throwing yourself, as you
No,
mentioned earlier, out your
art
comfort
is
zone.
no choice. I
Do
have
you
no choice.
do you feel like, as it just kind of going off on a side step here, as an artist, do you feel like that you don't have a choice but to kind of throw yourself into uncomfortable areas and try things that you just aren't accustomed to?
As an artist, I don't. As a person, it's like the same.
Right.
Art person.
I'm very much in alignment with that. It can be very daunting, and it's a learning curve, like most things I think in life. But I think, and I'm feeling as I'm kind of progressing with age, that there's so much riches and rewards to be had with that. I feel like there's a lot more fulfillment, to kind of throw yourself out of your comfort zone and sort of push yourself and see what you can do.
Yeah, but I always find like if you do it intuitively, then it flows. Like I wouldn't do something just because, oh, I talked to someone and they said, oh, I have to do this. It's
Right.
like almost like you want to just flow with that.
Yeah.
If the time is right and you jump into something unknown, it feels like that's going to work out better.
Again, I think it boils down to listening to yourself and being in a sort of tune with yourself. You could find a whole litany of challenges, but if they just don't speak to you, or you just feel like an instant disconnect or distance between them, then you probably shouldn't be trying to do them in the first place. You should kind of have a good idea of if this is a fit for me or not.
Yeah, but then again, now that I think of it, I mean, if you look at your top fears
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, okay, I'm going to tackle my top fears. I just now is, I mean, I've done that too. And, but if you said to me now, could you tackle one of your top fears now? I'd be like, no, I don't have any need to right now. Right now,
When you say you've tackled one of your top fears, what are you referring to there?
I had, I guess my two top fears were one, I had a fear of driving. And this
Okay.
because I had sort of a parent who was not a great merger onto freeways. It sort of freaked me out driving.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. So, and then moving to California, I'd never, I didn't have to drive in when I lived in Canada because I had, mass transportation.
Mm-hmm.
But here I mean, it's car culture. You have to have a car.
Right.
I mean, I rode my bike most of the time, but eventually I had to drive. And so that was a big fear. And actually, interestingly enough, when I was doing the training with my teacher, becoming a soul reader, is when I overcame my fear of driving.
Mm.
And with the help of my teacher, he was with me. I think one of the first times I was tackling that fear head on. And we were using a emotional freedom therapy technique, EFT, which is like a tapping where you do I had like a little tapping thing and I was tapping and saying some phrase, like, I can't remember. And then that really helped me a lot. So,
Mm.
and also
Excellent.
public speaking. I had a fear of public speaking. So actually I was teaching my moon circles. So I actually joined Toastmasters and did, my speeches and that was like a huge thing. And I've also done a lot of speeches at funerals, which is like a huge, a huge fear. Facing a huge
Oh,
audience
absolutely. Yeah, because of the personal and intimate nature of that. That's not just addressing somebody in a seminar. That's addressing someone that's lost a loved one. And
quite a few times.
yeah,
So yeah, and I guess when you have a funeral, you don't have any preparation for that. That's just like, okay. Like
yeah,
the night before, a relative said, oh, can you speak tomorrow at this? And it's a huge, like a giant gathering of people. I don't even know how many people, 500 something.
oh.
Can you speak? And I was like, I said, could you? She said, you're going to.
Oh, right, okay.
I didn't even have any, and so I just stayed up all night and wrote.
Yeah, I mean, that's a motivator for you, not being given a choice, I guess, thrown into the fire.
Well,
and
none of
told,
my other siblings, they were too afraid.
yeah.
Or one of them said they would never have done it.
Wow. So I kind of want to loop back to the idea of intuition. When you meet somebody, do you get an instant read? How natural is it? Is it just something that just is always there? Is it
Yeah.
something that just happens instantly? Like you just start picking up things?
I think there's different ways of being intuitive, and there's the kind like you're talking about, like osmosis, where constantly kind of being inundated with, this is, you're seeing stuff. I've never worked that way.
Okay. I would imagine that's exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people come to me and say, can you help me not be seeing all these like dead people around
Right.
all the time?
Kind of not be as receptive.
Yeah, help me not be receptive. So I've never had, that's not my way of being intuitive. And maybe that's why I came to it later in life. The way I do it is I have like all my rituals. I go in, I do yoga to prepare for reading. I have my space. I have, certain things I say before each reading so that I put myself into the zone, basically. So I'm in the zone when I do a reading. And then I tap into reading the person. I think one of the first times I ever did reading in public, I was like manager of some speed dating event with a friend of mine.
Okay.
Was at this nightclub in a casino, and she said in the middle of like in the break, she said, okay, Kathy's gonna do free readings for everyone. And so it's like White Snakes blasting on the stereo. I've got like a massive lineup of people. That was my introduction. So it's
Wow.
kind of like, okay, if I can do that, then I can pretty much do anything. But no, I don't get inundated. I feel like I'm someone who has a lot of, metaphysically speaking, a lot of protection. Like I've got a lot of strong guides, strong protection, strong barriers. So I'm not getting inundated.
Are these things that you can set up yourself? So for somebody that is perhaps very receptive, whose sensitivity is very high to receiving, is there things people can do to kind of limit that and kind of control that? Like how much control is there with this, if any?
I think that people who are receiving that kind of information all the time, that it's not pleasant.
No.
It's not something. So I think they end up just shutting down.
Yeah.
Because it would be too much. But yeah, I mean, I think you can work with learning protection skills, learning, whatever works for you. I mean, people work with stones, people work with, surrounding themselves with light, saying words, operating with all the senses to sort of create a protection for yourself.
Right.
Against being inundated.
Yeah. Because as you say, that does not seem pleasant. So I suppose everybody's sort of reception and susceptibility, I guess, to what they're receiving, it differs obviously, but not everybody, as you've said, kind of works the same way.
Yeah, I think there's those two ways. One, you're kind of osmosis, getting stuff all the time, sinking in. Two, you do what I do, which is you create a very safe, protective container for the work.
Have you picked up anything off me whilst talking? I'm kind of curious about that.
And see, I don't, that's what I mean. I don't do that. I don't pick up, I don't try to unless
you specifically knowing that's what.
If you said, would you read me right now? Yeah, I could. I guess I could pull a card for you.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. All right, gang. So there we go. We're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it on that cliffhanger to hear about my readings. well, not really full readings. Kathy was kind enough to pull a couple of cards for me from 2 of her homemade decks. But yeah, next week, we're going to be doing those card pulls. I'm going to be having my chakras checked. Never had that done before. I've always kind of been familiar with chakras in a very, very sort of brief passing way. I know they are things, they are connected to you. They can be open, they can be closed. That's about the height of my knowledge going into this. So yeah, I have my chakras checked, and then Kathy does some card pulls for me. So yeah, you've got that to look forward to next week. And that again will be a video episode. And again, going back to what I said at the top of the show, some things that we're covering here on the show really do lend themselves to a more visual approach. And I feel that is definitely one of them. Getting to see me go through that, getting to see the decks that Kathy is working with, the decks that she's made herself, and getting to just see that is definitely something I would encourage. As I mentioned earlier, you can check out Kathy's decks and all things related to what Kathy's doing, her YouTube channel, etc., in the show notes for this episode, whether that is in the show notes for the YouTube video on the website, dimed-out.com, or in the show notes for the device that you're using. You can find all links to what Kathy is doing in there. You can also find a bunch of links to what we're doing here in there as well, including a number of ways in which you can help support and show some love and help grow and evolve what we're doing here at Dimed Out. There are a number of ways. You can go check out our coffee page, which allows you to make a simple one-off donation if you are so inclined. If you've enjoyed what you've heard that much, you can do it that way. You can also check out our Patreon account where we've got extra bonus content for you to check out. Or if you want to take a much simpler and direct route, you can simply help us out by subscribing to the show, giving us a rating and a review. All of those things, all of them help enormously. So if you have enjoyed what you've heard here or on previous episodes, then yeah, that is an amazing, amazing way in which you can help move the show forward. If you want to get in touch with me about anything to do with the show, this episode in particular, previous episodes, or perhaps you've got suggestions and ideas for future episodes, I am always open with my ears. That doesn't even make sense, but I think you get what I mean. You can get in touch with me over on Twitter and Instagram at I am Mal Foster. Again, links in the show notes. And on that note, that pretty much does it for this week. As I say, next week, we're concluding our chat with Kathy. I'm going to be having some cards pulled. I'm going to be having my chakras checked. And yeah, we're going to kind of get into some additional questions as well to do with determinism and just fate, kismet, and all that good stuff. So yeah, plenty to look forward to next week. But as for this week, we're pretty much done. As always, thank you for listening. Look after yourselves. Look after each other, and until next week, keep it dimed out.